Welcome to the part 2 of the video about Vosteed Hedgehog, Vosteed Ankylo, and thank you Vosteed for providing these two knives for review, and Vosteed Raccoon 3rd anniversary limited edition with a Vancouver lock as well, which I purchased at my own expense for the channel. If you're watching this video on the day of the release, thank you for being a monthly member of my channel. I appreciate your financial support. And if it's farther along in the future, welcome to my channel. I hope you would consider becoming a member to get an early viewing of some of my videos. Everybody gets to see them eventually, but my members have this little perk. They get to see them a couple days before everyone else. So welcome to the channel. Let's go. We start our torture test with a Hype Smasher, a device constructed of a modified arbor press and a clamping system that is designed to hold the knife semi-rigidly, just as it would be in your grip, in such a way that the ram on the Hype Smasher can free fall and strike the blade at the spine. The knife is clamped in such a way that it does not impede the operation of the lock, and a free fall distance for this 2.5-pound ram is 6 inches. According to my calculations, the ram just struck the blade with a force of 40 to 45 pounds of force. And we're hitting it the second time. Setting up for the third one, I need to check the lock is still functional. I forgot to do it after the first strike. Here you go. And that's the third and final strike. And the lock still functions. And it looks like this raccoon with Vancouver lock have passed the test. At least it didn't unlock. Let's check the functionality. You may recall that Remet Peregrine Falcon in its original form did not pass this test. And now they introduced the safety, which prevents the knife from unlocking. And same can be said about the Riat with a pivot lock. This knife functions as intended. There's no off-centering of the blade. I don't detect any damage or blade play that would open up. Basically, it passes it with flying colors. The next test is even more arduous, even though it may not look as screen-worthy as the first one, because we are subjecting this knife to stresses induced by moments. First, I'm rigidly attaching the knife into this hardwood block. This carpenter's compass is set to 15 degrees. And I'm applying bending moment to the top of the handle, as you can see, while trying to keep the knife rigidly inserted. 15 degrees exceeds military specification, which only requires 9-degree bend test. So we can clearly say that this knife is being subjected to the stress levels that may not have been designed to. And now I'm doing this, applying a twisting moment to the handle. The handle is broad and wide, so that puts all the internal components under immense amount of stress. Once again, I observe no functional degradation to this knife. The centering of the blade remains the same. The function, as you just saw, is fine. And now I'm going to see if the tip of the blade that was inserted approximately 3/8 of an inch, so it's at a pretty thin area, if it permanently deformed. And I'm doing it by sight and sound by placing this blade on a flat metal block and boinking it. Yes, boinking is a totally scientific term. The reason I did not test the Hedgehog on the Hype Smasher is because I've already tested button-operated top liner lock or bottle before on that raccoon that you saw in part 1 of this video. And obviously it passed, or I would be retesting the lock. But this test is knife specific, not lock specific, so I'm going to do the exact same thing. Now, I get some criticism from other major channels for doing this test, although I am pretty sure neither Jared Neve nor Metal Complex minded when I tested their designs the same way, and both passed with flying colors. To get a little bit in the weeds, the reason to do the twist moment test is the fasteners are not designed to work in shear, they're designed to work in compression. So this little demonstration informs us on how well the design factors were integrated and how well the materials were selected. And clearly inserting it about 3/8 of an inch and subjecting it to this test did nothing to the knife. The blade remained straight as a ruler and the function is functional. Be careful, do not repeat these tests at home, because at every step you're risking injuring yourself or damaging the knife. And now it's time to see how Vosteed's heat treatment of M390 holds up. So I'm putting this Raccoon back on trial. This version is the 3rd-year anniversary version with premium handle and premium steel. And I don't think I mentioned that the first knife, which was the Ankilo, has LMAX steel, and the second knife you saw in this particular demonstration, Hedgehog, has S35 VM. So we're going through the same routine, and time to check out the knife. Same result. Centering is good. Function is perfect. In every way it functions as before. There's no play, and so we definitely passed the test. Let's see if there's any bending or permanent deformation, I should say, using long words here. I see none, I hear none. I don't think I checked the blade play on previous knives, so let's fix that issue. And I detected no blade play on either one of them. In order to test the blades for hardness, I have to partially disassemble the knives. And basically what I will show you in this segment is how to take the Vancor lock apart. You unscrew these 2 screws and just knock that cover plate out. You don't need to spin it. I spun it just to break any kind of possible, lubricant or Loctite that might hold it in place. And now I am going to remove these T8 screws. I'm doing it on the clip side of the handle. Remove both frame screws and loosen the pocket clip screws. Once you remove them, the plate will come right off. And if it's tight at that pivot sleeve, just use some kind of non-damaging pry bar. And now this plate, I'm not sure how best to call it, comes off. Underneath you see the bearing. That's unusually large inside diameter bearing, probably custom made for this knife. And then the blade slides off the pivot, and that pivot barrel is immense. And now I'm going to repeat the same procedure on the Ankilo. The first one was Raccoon. So as you can see, I'm very thorough in my tests, and that's why I am sincerely hopeful that by now you would hit the like button or subscribe to my channel if you weren't a subscriber yet. T8 here again. And hopefully some of you will find the content exciting enough to join my channel as members for a very, very low monthly fee, which would allow me to purchase knives for testing like I did with that previously seen Raccoon with Vancor lock. I paid out of pocket for it. I also provide links to all the tools that I use. They're affiliate Amazon links, including this Hoto multi-bit driver, which I find to be very handy. I buy them in pairs, and you can see why. The barrel here, or the spacer, the stop pin, isn't secured to the frame, so I have to use 2 drivers in order to remove one of the screws. And now I can open up the plate. Again, I'm using a plastic pry bar. A sharpened chopstick works. If you order Chinese, keep the chopsticks. They can make good tools. As you can see, the Raccoon is marked 3rd year anniversary on the inside. It's pretty cool. And this one is not marked. Very good machining here, a lot of milling internally. Yeah, the rest is basically the same. Very good bearing pressure on this pivot hole in the blade. Very precise fit. And now I'm going to quick remove the blade from the Hedgehog. Hedgehog has a BOTLL or bottle lock, so I am going to simply remove the blade and leave the handle intact, or leave it assembled, I should say. And to do that, you just need to push the pivot barrel out. Sometimes it's easier if you get the blade out of the locked position. And again, pretty snug fits here, slip fits, which is a pretty high level of machining, of milling. And not only that, but the hard anodizing on the aluminum has some thickness, so they calculated all the dimensions correctly so that the pivot hardware slip fits into a coated hole. That is good engineering, solid engineering on this knife. I am also going to test the earlier Raccoon with a BOTLL lock. I start all my hardness tests with validating the calibration of my Rockwell tester. I use this serialized, independently certified to the NIST standards test block. I take a measurement. The block is certified to be at exactly 61.99 or 62 HRC. And according to the industry standards, I am allowed to have 0.5 HRC repeatability error. So conclusively, we can say that this device is very well calibrated. I'm starting with the bottle or BOTLL lock Raccoon. This one I've had for a while. That's one of the earliest examples of this knife with this lock. 14C 28N steel. Is not known for extreme edge retention. Ooh, 57.1 HRC seems kind of low even for this steel. 58 to 60 HRC is an acceptable range, and I've seen them as high as 61.5 on other knives. Anyway, the second poke yields the same result, 57.1 HRC. Let's try it the third time. Yeah, I think perhaps they used some kind of thermal process to apply this coating, which annealed the steel beyond what it was intended to do. 54.9. I think I hit it too close to the pivot hole, so we're going to redo. Anyway, the poke is supposed to be 3 millimeters from any edge or periphery of the material. And it's a little challenging to place such a small area on the anvil. That's why I had to purchase this tapered anvil separately. 55.1 HRC. Definitely nothing to write home about unless you want to complain. Now we're testing LMAX on this Ankilo. I am not as familiar with this steel. My understanding it is similar to the properties of S30V and S35VN, somewhere in between those two steels, but I'll have to read up on it a little better. 61.5, very respectable hardness. Looked at some tables, and that's right around where Dr. Laren Thomas tested that steel in his characterization tables. Second poke, we'll see what that yields, 61.6. So we're very, very repeatable. That's to me an evidence of reasonably good heat treating process. In other words, hardness is not the only way to describe the steel, but the process itself has to be consistent throughout the blade. 60.5 HRC, so we're really in the same ballpark, but I'll do an extra poke here just to be sure that dropping about a whole point of HRC wasn't some kind of outlier. And if it is an outlier, I will exclude it from the average calculations for this knife. And we got 61.8. So definitely was an outlier, and the average is 61.6 HRC. S35VM is next on this Hedgehog blade. I would expect roughly the same hardness as on LMAX. We'll see. I'm actually getting pretty high reading here. That is a little bit of a shock. I have not seen this steel at that hardness very often, if ever. Let's do it again, make sure it's not some kind of outlier again on the high side this time. Yeah, 61 to 62 is what you normally would expect, or even lower. I got 62.6. So they seemingly took it a notch higher, which for a reputable company means they're using an advanced heat treatment process. I don't think you can get it that high without some kind of cryogenic heat treatment. And if it was not properly tempered, it would have cracked on the previous test, 62.7. Wow, 62.8 average hardness on this blade. I am shocked in a good way. Let's hope M390 on this premium Raccoon holds up to the now newly set expectations. Yeah, so M390 is typically heat treated anywhere between 59 and 61.5 HRC. No way! How in darnation? How did they do that? To the best of my knowledge, the only way to get it that hard is to do perfect high temperature austenization, followed by double tempering process with cryogenic treatment in between. That is crazy, especially considering the fact that the owner of the Vosteed company is a former Kaiser employee, and Kaiser is not exactly known for pushing the limits on hardness of their blades. They're very, very conservative and are on the low side. 62.5. That is still pretty high. It is high, take my word for it. 62 on M390 is a subject to celebration on most channels that I've watched, and this is going above and beyond. Good job. Is it only because it's a 3rd anniversary edition of this knife, or are they going to keep up with that going forward? I would like to find out. 63.0. That is insane. 62.8 average is extremely unusual for M390. In fact, I am so shocked I'm going to recalibrate my tester just to make sure nothing shifted as I was testing the blades. So I'm putting that same block rated at 62 HRC, and let's see what it turns out to be. I am really, really hopeful that there is nothing wrong with the calibration of my Rockwell tester. What do you guys think about this hardness? 62.2 HRC, well within allowable calibration. We're good to go. I will share my thoughts on this topic at the very end of the video, but first let's go back to reassembling these knives. There's absolutely no rocket science involved. You just repeat all the steps in the reverse. There are no difficulties or surprises. Everything goes together. You have to mind a magnet in the center of an core lock because it might pick up a screw or two. Other than that, there's like no brainer. Doesn't go together any harder than any liner lock knife that I've ever done. The video is a little bit accelerated out of respect for your time. So please don't forget to comment. I'm really looking forward to your thoughts about the hardness that I just established. And the only thing to mind here is the barrel screw is a little shorter for the stop pin than the others. That's why I was hesitant here. So there is a trick to it. Sorry, I'm so excited about that hardness test that I'm not sure what I'm saying. Right, so once you put it all together, the pivot is adjusted using the 2 T6 screws on the smiley plate. And I feel like it should have a little more Loctite. When they came out a little loosely. So I think I'm going to add Loctite. I'll provide a link to the non-permanent Loctite in the description. But what I normally do is I over tighten it a little bit and then loosen it up to apply just the right amount of pressure. So here's my Loctite. Decided that I am not going to risk leaving these screws in because when they're fully torqued, the pivot becomes too tight. So here you go. Just a tiny little drop of Loctite. Use any sharp implement to pick up a little drop, and then just tighten it, go through the whole tightening routine again, which means over tighten it slightly and then loosen it incrementally. Here's the other screw. I did screws one at a time, which is what you should do if you have a new knife. You don't need to disassemble it, just take one screw at a time and apply Loctite, because I only found Loctite on that stop pin screw. All right, and then once you're satisfied with function and centering, just finish it up. And by that, I mean don't forget to retighten the pocket clip screws. This is a titanium pocket clip, and you don't want to lose it. I already reflected on overall quality of this knife. I think it is impeccable. It's on par with anything I've seen from top manufacturers, whether they're foreign or domestic. Excellent knife. Sorry, I don't usually sing praises to knives that I test, but as you can see, other than the lack of secondary safety around the pivot button, I detect no faults. Now, I do highly recommend introducing this safety because even as I was playing with the knife, the knuckle on my thumb engaged the button enough to unlock it. So this was my one and only serious criticism of the Vancouver system. The button can be accidentally actuated by your knuckle. If you're gripping the knife, you can totally find a location, and it's not far-fetched. The saving grace here, if it does unlock and the blade drops, the finger choil will hit your index finger. Now, if your index finger was forward for some reason, like this, when you held the knife, contorting myself like so, and you accidentally unlock, then you can sustain an injury. So I would not recommend trying to use the knife in this particular orientation until, that is, they will introduce the safety lock, which they will, because I'm sure I will not be the only reviewer who critiques them on that point. Is it less desirable because of that? To some people it may be. I think they should absolutely address it, just as they addressed the hardness issues they had in the beginning. I wonder if they untethered themselves from Kaiser and using different OEM for the blades, and this OEM heat treats the blades to much higher standards. Maybe, and that's what I want to talk about. So Vosteed and I had a little bit of a falling out over my review of their fixed blade Clever Girl. And after that, I haven't heard from them for a while, and all of a sudden they not only contacted me, they offered me 2 knives for a review and a new model coming out as well. And I'm wondering, they offered these to me because they knew that on my channel I use now an industry standard Rockwell tester, and they wanted to get the word out as quickly as possible that their heat treatment took them to the next level. Share your thoughts. I hope you enjoyed this very long video, and we'll talk about some of this stuff again, I'm sure, when the next Vosteed comes my way.